Hello, Sage Creek. You're listening to SagePOL, Sage Creek High School's premier political and current events podcast. Today we're having Senior Nicholas Tappin on, and we'll be discussing how a Joe Biden administration might handle some of the most important issues in our country today, and how his approach to these issues might affect students at Sage Creek. Nicholas, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
So my first question is on one of the more pressing issues facing the United States today, COVID-19. Biden has been extremely critical of the Trump administration's handling of COVID-19, and many states' governors have issued mask mandates. And so my question is, do you think a Biden administration will implement a nationwide mask mandate? And more broad than that, how do you think a Joe Biden administration responds to COVID-19 and some of the problems that's created for lots of Americans?
Yeah, okay, so regarding the mask mandate, there's been some discussion of whether Joe Biden's going to have a universal mask mandate nationwide. I don't know if that will happen or not, because by the time the vaccine may be widely distributed, definitely to healthcare workers and higher risk communities such as the elderly and people with pre-existing conditions, absolutely with recent spikes in South Dakota and Indiana, where both governors have been taking very lackadaisical stance on COVID, like having an open economy, having open stores, having no masks, and kind of flattening calling COVID a hoax. Definitely Joe Biden's going to coordinate his efforts and federal efforts with, on a local level in those two states particularly, or any other states that are experiencing abnormal spikes. So he's going to definitely issue a mask mandate or require a mask mandate in those regions. Whether or not it's a federal mask mandate, I don't know for sure. It depends on, the situation in a couple months when he's inaugurating in about 46 days. So definitely he's going to issue a mask mandate in those two regions and any other regions that are experiencing a ton of deaths. Like I said, especially in South Dakota, I believe approximately 1 in 1,000 South Dakotans have died due to COVID. So that's in a very small state and very low populated state. That's definitely, a issue that's definitely showing how COVID is destructive and how lackadaisical public policy action is in tackling the crisis. In terms of on a national level, Joe Biden's definitely going to take more of a hands-on approach on the federal level. He's already said he's going to rejoin the World Health Organization to coordinate our efforts with other nations in tackling this global pandemic. He's also said he's going to expand the Public Health Services Act, which is going to allow COVID to be freely accessible, openly accessible, regardless of any racial inequities. He's also said that part of the National Security Council Directorate for Biodefense, which Trump got rid of, Biden's already said he's going to bring that back into play, and they're going to analyze where racial inequities or other inequities based on color for people of color, and he's going to heavily invest in those areas so everyone in the U.S. can actually get the vaccine and everyone's able to equally recover, because COVID is the biggest obstacle in having a robust economy once again. Joe Biden has also said that he's looking for a very passionate and very competent candidate for whoever would be the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. So a lot of people, that's usually a lesser role in the presidential cabinet, but especially now with approximately 20 million people on the verge of eviction nationwide, whoever will be the Secretary of Urban Planning and Housing would be a very important person, especially with COVID, to deal with the soon impeding evictions.
Right. And then moving on to a kind of a different topic, as far as international relations go, Trump took a very different course of action from many U.S. presidents since World War II when it comes to foreign relations. So how do you think a Joe Biden administration might approach foreign affairs differently from Trump's administration?
Okay, so a big difference you're going to see between Trump's 4 years and Biden is that Trump was a very America first candidate. That was literally one of his top slogans was America first. He's going to place American interests first. Joe Biden, throughout his experience as a vice president, was an unapologetic globalist. He has had a lot of experience with coordinating with world leaders. He went to the Munich Security Conference in 2009. And he also has said that he wants to extend the START treaty, the new START treaty, which is the last nuclear arm limit treaties that we have with Russia. That's set to expire by February. So I tend to break down Biden's foreign policy or anticipate foreign policy in about 4 pillars. One's like taking a stronger stance against human rights abuses worldwide, especially in Saudi Arabia and in Russia and in North Africa and the rest of the world. Another is to reinvigorate our alliance with our European allies and East Asian allies, because especially with Trump's comments regarding NATO and seeing Biden's election, you saw a lot of European leaders, especially Emmanuel Macron in France, and you see the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau tweeted saying, "Let's build bridges, not walls." That was actually the London mayor that said that. And then the German foreign minister actually said, "Let's reinvest in rebuilding our transatlantic alliance." So definitely Biden's going to place a ton of emphasis on rebuilding NATO and our global allies, because especially with NATO, the Secretary General of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, actually said that we definitely need a stronger NATO, especially now with the rising threat of Russia and the global imbalance of power of China.
And do you think there's any real worry that if Biden does not foster better relations with Europe, do you think that traditional Western European allies of the United States could continue to open up better relations with China? Do you think any of these Western European countries like Germany or France would even join the Belt and Road Initiative and would have infrastructure in their countries built by China? Do you think that's a worry of the Biden administration?
Yes, potentially. I think definitely a hurdle. I don't think if the United States takes a very continues its lackadaisical stance, which I really don't think Biden's going to maintain. He's already proven that was one of his distinctions from Donald Trump. And I don't think Europe's going to immediately become Chinese allies overnight. I think definitely Europe, as you've seen with the Trump administration and his geopolitical stance with the deteriorating NATO alliance, definitely Europeans kind of had it with American leadership, and they saw like how precarious their relationship and leadership with the Americans was, because you have Bush, Obama, and Trump that had very different foreign policy stances. So they don't really want their security on a global scale to be under America's wing, which clearly is dysfunctional. But so Biden would definitely need to take more bold stances than Obama or Bush did, because he has a lot of ground to make up and to actually prove to the world and our democratic Western allies that America is back, we are a world leader, and we are willing to stand up to be the world leader that we always were.
Okay. Now, this is an issue that a lot of people, I think a lot of young people are extremely passionate about right now, climate change. So under the Trump administration, he pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord, and he had a number of administration-wide policies that, to a lot of people, did not help the problem that is climate change, or did not help to solve the problem that is climate change. So how do you think a Biden administration tackles climate change? And do you think it resembles something that we've seen in other European countries, where other European leaders have invested heavily in hydroelectric power and wind power? Do you think a Biden administration might do that?
Absolutely, yeah. Definitely with the European powers, they're trying to become carbon neutral by 2023, 2025, or 2030. I think New Zealand is 2025. I know they're not a European power, but they're definitely a close American ally. So I don't think Biden's going to be that ambitious to achieve carbon neutrality by then, but he's definitely going to take a stronger stance. Biden, along with COVID and other public health issues, during the campaign, he said that he supports science over fiction. So he's definitely going to give a way larger stage light to scientists and public health officials, and they're definitely going to lead the way with that. You saw with Trump, 13 different federal agencies came to him with the global climate change report, and he basically said, there would be no economic impact. Like, it's a hoax, nothing will happen. But Biden's going to take a very different stance, because he recognizes global climate change is a threat just recently he announced his preliminary cabinet nominations, and John Kerry, who was the original Secretary of State under Obama, is literally the first global climate change member of the National Security Council. So this is the first time global climate change has ever been has a seat on the National Security Council. So Biden quite publicly sees global climate change as a national security threat.
And how effective do you think Joe Biden will be as a bipartisan leader? He's campaigned an awful lot as a proven leader, and one of his more famous claims is that he will, quote, work with Democrats and Republicans and as hard for those who don't support me as for those who do. So do you think that a Biden administration really tries to mend some of the divisiveness that Trump created and at this point, the hatred that both sides really seem to have for each other? Do you think he makes waves in terms of trying to bring together both sides of American politics?
Yes, I think, his efforts and what he says are two, and what will actually happen are two different things. Obama said the same exact thing in 2008 because he was, making history as the first African-American president, and he said, I want to bring political unity to Washington. Clearly, by the time he left, that didn't work out. I think Biden definitely has high hopes to achieve that, but I think especially after with Trump and growing political polarization, that won't really happen. I think Biden's best bet is to get a Democratic majority in the Senate, and after he achieves that, then he could begin working towards bipartisan collaboration, which I don't really think is going to happen unless he takes some bold moves or he truly acts as a moderate, because especially seeing his policies, he's the most progressive president since Franklin Delano Roosevelt. So he may have to tone that down a little bit to get the Republicans on the side of tackling COVID-19 and everything. But as I see it right now, that bipartisan collaboration, just everyone holding hands to foster some sort of progress with public policy, may not work in the at least the preliminary days of his new administration.
Well, thank you, Nicholas, for joining us. And I believe that's all the time we have. Where can people find you? Where should people reach out to you if they want to talk about politics or, just want to reach out to you?
Yeah, sure. So I have an Instagram account. So anyone can request to follow me and DM me, and I'll answer any questions. The link to my book that I wrote with my friend Wiley Waggoner on American foreign policy and what stances America should take is a link in my Instagram bio, so you guys can go check that out. I have a couple interviews and podcasts with my friend Noe that are also on his YouTube channel. Yeah, so thanks for having me again.
Well, thank you again for joining us on another episode of SagePOL. That's Poll for Politics. I'm Nick Cepek. I want to thank Nicholas again so much for joining us, and thank you for listening.